Good. All right, I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Tree Board for February 4th and take a quick roll call before we start.
Ken Rasmussen.
Melanie Crowder.
Sue Alexander.
Kathleen Baralt.
Gordon Matheson.
And if we could stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I will ask for public comment on any item on the agenda. That's not you yet. If there's anybody else out there, was there anybody on Zoom? I assume not. Okay. Can I get an approval of the minutes for December 3rd, 2020? Oh, I'm sorry. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda for this evening's meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the December 3rd Tree Board meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of December 3rd.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, minutes approved. Unfinished business. I have, well, the first thing I want to do, because I want to continue this and make this a regular feature of our meetings, I'm going to read the mission of our board so that people understand what it is we do and why we're doing it. The Tree Board is an advisory committee authorized by the Chesapeake Beach Ordinance, Chapter 263, the Urban Forest. Our mission is to promote, protect, and preserve the urban forest and tree canopy of Chesapeake Beach. This ecosystem increases property values and reduces utility costs for individual homeowners. It increases commercial revenues through increased tourism. It reduces air, noise, and visual pollution in town. And it overall improves the community's quality of life by having a natural environment in which to live. Our job as a board is to review the tree removal permits, determine the merits of this removal, and make recommendations to the town for trees worthy of preservation or mitigation requirements on the removal of trees. All right, I have two items to discuss tonight before we get to our case. I am, for the board, I am meeting with Somalia, the town administrator, tomorrow. I am going to be talking to her about the communication of the ordinance and permit requirements to the community. We've talked about this being a challenge this year, that some people are simply not aware that it's out there. And I'm also going to follow up on once we have recommended mitigation procedures to the town, we don't get any report back from the town on what they've done, if they've executed those recommendations, if they've followed up, what's happened. And I think we should get that. We should find out if they are following up on what we've recommended or not recommended. So I'm going to address that with her tomorrow. The third thing I want to address with her is, what do we do in the case of a tie? Our board is 6 members. 6 are here, if 4, a quorum is here, and we have a tie on whether or not we're going to approve, disapprove, mitigate, not mitigate a recommendation, what happens? And I haven't gotten a direct answer on that yet. So I want to talk to her about what is the proper procedure for that. If we have to call another hearing and wait until we get a tie, not tie, uneven majority vote, or if there is some town regulation that tells us what we should do in that case. Does anybody have any other issues you want me to bring up with her while I have her ear? Are there things we need to talk about? We've talked about we did the one amendment for tree size. Do we have any other amendments we want to recommend for the ordinance? Do we want to discuss anything with her?
I just want 2 things. I want to make sure I understand communication reference to the community. What exactly does that mean? And my other question is, I like that you're going to follow up with the town administrator regarding our recommendations, because I was thinking about that today. We've already heard several cases, and have they planted the trees? I know we give a deadline for the trees, but want to make sure, is there a follow-up after the trees have been planted as well, if they're thriving or not? And we'll absolutely have the notification. So I'm glad you're doing that.
That's my concern with that. The communication is just getting the word out that this tree ordinance is in place and that people are required to get permits to take trees down. And depending on the size and location of the tree, they're not necessarily allowed to take the trees down. We have lots of mitigation recommendations, but people just don't know that this is a rule.
Has,
So I want to make sure that the town is pushing that out to the community.
was it determined yet if that information about permit requirement for the trees would be included with real estate, anyone who bought a new resident? We don't know that. Okay.
Don't know.
Thank you.
Don't know any of that. That's what I want to find out from her.
Understand. Thank you.
Anything else anybody wants me to address with her when I meet with her tomorrow?
Sue, could you please address the budget and where we are and what will be included in our budget next year, whether the arborist or other items will be included in the tree board budget, please?
Yes. Anything else? All good with that? Annual report. I have to write up an annual report for our board for 2024. And one of the things in the requirements that I saw was, do we want to address any changes to the ordinance? And I probably should have brought this up before the meeting, but I'm going to put it into your minds now. If you could think back to this year and what we've done, haven't done, the challenges we've had because this is a new working ordinance, are there any recommendations we want to make for amendments to the ordinance? And you don't need to tell me tonight, but let's say by February 15th, 2 weeks, if you guys could send me any recommendations you have, if we need to address it first, before I put it in the annual report. If it's going to be a long discussion, I may put off putting it in 2024's annual report. But I would like to throw that out for consideration because I know this has been a work in progress for us. All right. Is there anything else anybody else wants to address before we get into our case? Are we good? All right. Case 2025-01. Reviewed after the fact permit application submitted by Alan Calloway for the removal of 5 trees located at 7726 Old Bayside Road. We received from the town planning and zoning administrator her recommendations. But I think before we get into that, Alan, there's a button on the microphone. If you can push that, it'll turn. Is it on?
Gotta hold it.
If you can just give us a quick
It's already on.
summary of what you did and why you felt the need to do it.
Okay, well, I hired a contractor to cut down trees was the number one thing I need to say here. But I've had these trees in my yard. In the center of my driveway, I got a circle driveway. I don't know if y'all had the permit with the pictures and explanations. I've got pictures here of damage they've caused to 2 different vehicles. And also, and I wish I would have kept it on my Ring camera, an incident where a limb fell right behind an Amazon vehicle right after he had walked behind his vehicle to the door. Between the time he left his vehicle, went to my door and came back, it had fell in that time frame. We're right where he was going to walk. And it's just a constant issue. My girlfriend and I haven't slept upstairs during the storm in about 3 years. So about a week after these trees were down, we actually slept upstairs, and I'm happy they're gone. I'm not apologizing for them being gone.
Right.
I'm not anti-tree. I donate to the Arbor. I'm a member of the Arbor Day Foundation. I donate to Save the Bay. I do those things. I know I'm missing some things. I know you don't want me to grandstand up here.
Okay, so you did it because you felt it was a safety hazard?
Oh, absolutely a safety hazard.
Okay. Questions to start with. I have a few to start with. Did
Can I
we-
just say, I used to be a contractor, and I never went to a customer to do a job and said, can you get the permit for me? When I had my roof done, they didn't say, hey, can you get the permit for me? When I had Ramjack, a company, because I had cracks in my foundation last year. That's just, they do it. The contractor does that.
Right.
So I was surprised that there wasn't a permit pulled.
That was gonna be my first question do you know if he's a registered contractor with the state? Is he licensed?
Registered with the state, I have no idea.
Okay,
Mr. Barry, he was there. Mr. Barry got his card,
did he?
which is more than
Okay.
I have of, I don't even have one of his cards.
All right. So in your application that you submitted after the fact, you stated that at least one was dead or dying. We saw a picture of that. You indicated that there was a lot of dead limbs in these trees on all of them.
Right. I had
Although
some
looking
pictures.
at the picture I saw, I didn't see, there was one picture. This picture. That the trees look fairly healthy. I'm not seeing it. Did somebody come and tell you they were dead trees?
No, I mean, it's a typical poplar tree where their limbs, they break off during the windstorms.
Okay,
That's why almost every poplar tree, at least in my yard, has like a 45 to 90-degree angle on the limb for where it's grown out, broke, and then grown up.
right. Okay. I'll have to say, it was brought to my attention that back in 2017, you did apply for a tree
Right, I did
permit.
those myself, yes.
Right, and you didn't think to ask the guy, did he get the permit or
He
anything?
called me, or let me know on a Thursday evening that he'd be able to come. I talked to him a couple weeks before, I don't remember how far before, where I got the estimate and that sort of thing. And he said on a Thursday evening, he said, I could be there Monday if that's okay. I wasn't even home, when he was there.
Right,
So until I was driving home and Mr. Barry called me, I didn't even know anything was going on.
okay. All right. Anybody have any other questions? Those are my questions. Kathleen?
Yes, Mr. Callaway, previously you had a permit.
Mhm.
Obviously you were a businessman. It didn't strike you that a licensed tree removal company would have a permit, or, I mean, because with
I assumed he
anything,
did have a permit, yes.
but you didn't ask.
No, I wasn't there when he showed up.
Well, you had a conversation on
I
the
didn't
phone.
ask my roofer if he had a permit. I didn't ask my contractor that jacked up my house if they had a permit.
Previously obtained a permit to
Right.
remove trees, so you knew.
Because I did it myself.
I understand that, but you knew, I'm sure you must have read some language saying that if you were going to remove a tree, you needed a permit, that you got that in 2017. So why would you think that that would not be relevant in 2025?
I didn't think that. I'm saying I would assume that the contractor would do that. It's just not something that we specifically talked about. I didn't specifically talk about it with my roofer. I didn't specifically talk about it with my other contractor. It's just what they do. It's what I did when I was a contractor.
But, well, then why in 2017, what made you in 2017 seek a permit?
Because I was doing it myself. I didn't pay somebody else to do it.
I see. And you talked about damage to the vehicle. What kind of damage?
I got. Like, you want me to bring them up?
On one of these pictures, I see a power line that crosses the.
Right.
How far is that power line from these trees?
Oh, from the closest one, it would have been 40 feet, maybe. I meant to measure that stuff before I came, but I didn't. But probably 3 of them are in striking distance of the power lines.
How long have you lived at that residence?
2015.
Okay, so you didn't plant the trees?
No, I planted lots of trees. I've probably planted between shrubs and trees 30 to 40 on my property since I've been there.
I'm just trying to get around my head around whose responsibility it is to know that there's a permit or not.
I
The
didn't know that the
contractor
permit
or the
is required.
homeowner?
I'm sorry.
The contractor or the homeowner, who's the responsible party? If there's a law that exists for a permit, who does that responsibility ultimately fall on?
I would say the contractor, if you get paid to do a job. And I don't know the law on that, but
So if it's a registered contractor with the state of Maryland, you would have the reason to believe that they had permission. But if it's not,
well, when I asked him about it, he just said, I didn't realize I was in city limits or town limits. That was his answer why he didn't have one.
Why
I
he
had
didn't
that-
have
I
a
had that in a text message.
That's kind of a blow off.
Why he didn't have a because most people who are removing trees, they if they're licensed, they know they need a permit in this area.
Right.
So I don't. It would make me think he's not a licensed tree removal.
and you don't have his card even.
Mr. Barry got his card.
Jacob's card, yeah.
Josh's Tree Service, 410-490-6688.
I don't
That's-
know from memory, but okay.
Did you complete the permit that we have?
That's what I turned
Oh,
in.
okay, so that would be
Josh's Tree
you who
Service.
put that on there. Is that
Uh,
right? Did you complete the permit that was completed
Yes, I-
after? And so that actually has the contractor information, so I assume you completed that.
Any other questions? Before we discuss? Good? Okay. The Town Planning and Zoning Administrator, Sarah Franklin, issued a memorandum after discussion with Jay Berry, and I don't know if she actually went out to the house or not, but I know she has the pictures and went through the ordinance. And I'm just going to read her whole memorandum and then we will discuss it. On January 13th, Alan Calloway applied for an after-the-fact tree removal permit for 5 trees at 7726 Old Bayside Road. All 5 trees are tulip poplars and were removed without proper permits. 1 tree is within 50 feet of the public street. This tree is 83 inches in circumference. 4 of the 5 trees are more than 50 feet from the public road. The circumferences of these trees are 90 inches, 82 inches, 78 inches, 75 inches. One of these trees was identified as being clearly diseased and dying. Chapter 263 of the Town Code exists to protect the urban forest present in Chesapeake Beach. Trees that are protected by this ordinance and were removed are estimated as follows. Trees worthy of preservation are under Schedule 263-2A2. Trees on private property with trunks that measure at least 50 inches in circumference at 4.5 feet above ground level if located less than or equal to 50 feet from a public street or sidewalk. Also worthy of preservation are trees on private property with trunks that measure at least 75 inches in circumference at 4.5 feet above ground level if located more than 50 feet from a public street or sidewalk. The removal of these trees constitutes a misdemeanor under Chapter 263-8B as more than 3 trees were removed in less than 6 months. The table below shows fines for a misdemeanor charge for this level of misdemeanor. There's 5 trees, it's $200 per tree plus an additional amount for the inches above 50 inches at circumference. So the minimum total fine under this clause would be $10,000. If the board wishes to consider charging the lesser municipal infraction, the table below provides calculated fines. This lesser municipal infraction is looking at it as one incident, not three separate incidents. Under this infraction, 263-A, 8A, it's $300 per tree with some additional fines for inches above 50 inches in circumference. Under this infraction table, the estimated minimum total fine is $5,000. In addition to any fines issued by the tree board, the applicant must plant 5 trees to replace the trees that were removed. The replacement tree must be one of the following trees, and there's a list of trees there. Now, my thoughts on this are, I definitely do not consider this 3 separate instances in my view. More than 3 trees, yes, but they all happened at once. It wasn't like he cut down 1 tree and then we went back and he cut down another tree and we warned him again and he cut down a 3rd tree, which is how I read the first one. That did not happen here. So I'm starting at the lower of the 2 infractions. I think one of the trees we have pictures of and Jay certified that it definitely was dead and dying. I think that should be definitely exempt because we have proof that it was dead and dying. So we
2 of them were hollow. That were,
we only had pictures showing 1.
okay, I got this.
So I'm just starting my discussion with that. Let us have our discussion, and then if you want to have further comments at the end, we'll see where we end up here. So I would take, and I don't know which one of the trees it is, so I'm just gonna, since they all come in at the same fine for each tree, I'm gonna take 1 out. Then I looked at some other factors. Tulip poplars are an issue in this town. We've had a fatal death because of one falling. We've discussed the fact before that they can be unstable. These trees were close to his home. He's had branches fall off near his home, so I can see the safety issue of the tulip poplars and wanting to take them down for that. And we have discussed this in previous cases that have come before us. Tulip trees as a species are an issue, and the proximity of this house and a safety issue I also agree with. What concerns me is the no permit. It is evident to us that you knew about the permit process. And in response to Ken's question, and I think we had this come up in one of our other issues, it's the responsibility of the homeowner to make sure these things happen. If you're the one subject to the ordinance, not the tree guy. Any tree guy with a chainsaw can come in and say, oh, geez, taking down a tree, yeah, I'm doing it right. But it's really the property's owner's obligation to make sure that the contractor is complying with town regulations. May not be customary for people to do that. People may get contractors all the time, but when it comes down to rule of law, to me, it's the responsibility of the homeowner to verify the that the permit is in place. And since you already had gotten a permit, I have to believe you're at least aware there should have been one. So to me, that falls on you and not the contractor. The other concern I have, driving by your house, you sit up on a hill, the trees are up at the top of your driveway, and then it goes down. And one of the reasons for our ordinance is to protect the community in general from erosion, from flood runoff. And my concern is with all of these trees gone at the top, your yard is now very open. And if we have any major storm or something comes through, all that water is going to wash off. It's going to cause erosion, and it could potentially run down and erode your neighbors' properties and cause flooding. And that's a concern to me. I feel it's our obligation to protect all homeowners in our community. So that is a concern for allowing these trees to come down in the first place. They're down now. There's nothing we can do about it except to find/mitigate. And what I say in balancing those two things, the safety of your home and the fact that they're tulip poplars, and we're all concerned about those in our town, versus the knowledge that you should have gotten the permit And as they say, you know, ignorance of the law is not an excuse. We have to take that into consideration. I would recommend either a flat $1,000 fine or a $500 fine for not getting the permit, for taking trees down that we probably wouldn't have had you take down, plus replanting 5 trees and replacing the ones you've got that you took down. We have in the ordinance the size, I think they're 4 or 6 foot trees. You'd have to replace it. We have a whole list of trees that are acceptable to us. But that would be my thoughts on what we should recommend to the town. Is one, just a flat financial fine for not complying with the ordinance. I don't think that we need to do the full $5,000 fine. I think there are mitigating circumstances here. But I do think we have an obligation to enforcing the codes of this town. And so we have to say something. It's either this total just flat financial, or we'll take it in half as long as you commit within 6 months to replanting 5 trees somewhere on your property that's appropriate, not near your house, not tulip poplars, but somewhere on your property, replanting those trees so that we can replace the canopy that has come down. Does anybody have any comments on that? Do we want to have a discussion about that? Do we have any thoughts?
You mean, do we agree with that?
Yeah, or do you want to recommend something else?
I'd like to recommend something else. I think you make very valid points, Chairwoman, and I understand and I agree with you about the one tree was hollow. I just feel strongly about the ignorance of the law. I feel like it is the homeowner's responsibility. I mean, you know, I'm going to have somebody build a pool at my house. Well, I'm assuming, okay, maybe they have a permit. I think they do, but I think it's very irresponsible not to have checked. And ultimately, I'm responsible. If in building that pool, they cause a landslide to my neighbor, I'm absolutely responsible for that. So just to have somebody willy-nilly come in and, yeah, I assume he has a permit and let him go ahead, I just think it's irresponsible. So, and I think we hear that time and time again. And I think we're doing everything on the tree board. This is a urban forest area. And I think that we have to make sure that we get this information out, that you need a permit to remove trees. But also, these are substantial trees. I mean, I'm obviously not an arborist. I can't imagine how long they've been there, but there's not just one, there were 5. And maybe one, possibly 2 would have been removed and we would have approved it had it come before the tree board. But I disagree with the flat fee. Let me clarify. I would go for the flat fee, but I don't think it should be $1,000. I think I'll go for not the $10,000, but I certainly think it should be at minimum $3,000. I think this is just critical, and we keep seeing this, people coming before and saying, oh, I didn't know. And it's the ordinance, and as a homeowner, you have to be responsible for that. So
I would have to say, we have in the past had one other occasion where we have given a significant fine for the same reason it seemed egregious.
I'd say something, and that is that I agree with you that it should not, Chairwoman, that it should not be the misdemeanor level, but that it should be the municipal infraction level. I also think $1,000 is not sufficient regarding the infraction and the knowledge of needing a permit from years ago and not ascertaining that the permit was in fact in place. I do think that the fact that one tree was decayed in the interior, if we had evidence that there were 2 trees, which we don't have that evidence, we have one photograph. If it were
photographs on my phone, I could show you.
if it were 2 trees, I would say take 2 out of the 5,000 off and make it 3,000. I would also consider the idea of tulip poplars being an issue. However, I have tulip poplars all over my yard and I simply maintain them preventatively. And so I don't see that having a tulip poplar of whatever age is immediately a kind of pass on this ordinance.
Okay,
So what I'm saying is basically starting at $5,000, presuming Alan can find evidence that 2 of the 5 trees were diseased, I would drop it to 3,000.
Okay.
With the agreement that it was that mitigation of 5 additional trees, not tulip poplars, not close to the house, be implemented.
any other comments? Gordon, Melanie?
Actually, I agree with Ken. I think that's what he said is, in my view, is the way to go.
Okay.
Now, I do want to say that we don't have anything in the ordinance that allows us to penalize the contractor. Because I understand what he said about you're assuming that we had a deck replaced on our house, and I assumed the contractor was getting the permit from the town and the municipality to do the deck, and it turns out they didn't. And so there are all sorts of fines and things going on. Now, we had just moved in, we were unaware, but we were assuming a contractor was aware, local contractor was aware of what needed to be done with the city. And so I do have some sympathy for that, even though granted, he had knowledge that a permit was required.
Right.
Yeah.
I think this is another topic that we have discussed before and probably should bring up in terms of addressing it as an amendment to the ordinance.
Yeah.
It doesn't impact this case, obviously.
No, it does
But
not.
I do think we've discussed this before, is how do we get to these contractors and make sure they're compliant? I was rereading the ordinance and it doesn't even specifically say in the ordinance that a homeowner has to use a licensed contractor. I know the town or the town administrator had told me that it was a requirement, but it's not in our particular ordinance. So I think that maybe will be something I bring up with Somalia tomorrow is what is the regulation on that? Can he then go after his contractor? But I mean, it may be a moot point at this, until we do something about that, but I'll follow up on that.
Is it appropriate that this town writes the contractor a letter saying that what they did and what it's costing the homeowner? And that if they want to continue to do business within this town, they better comply with the regulations?
I can talk to Somalia about that. Somalia, we probably need to talk to town attorney too,
Yeah.
but we could certainly
Well, you're not
we could
necessarily
talk to the town
threatening them.
attorney about,
You're informing them that they're coming back.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, this is a gap in our application of penalties and so forth. If people can find Joe's company with a chainsaw
Yeah.
and Joe says, huh, what? And owner says, I didn't know. But of course, in this case, the owner knew that permits were needed from previous experience. I just feel like we need to make it much more clear
Yeah, that's something we need to address. Okay,
going forward.
I'll start a
Separate
discussion.
from this case.
That's separate from this case.
Yeah, it's separate from this case. I'll start a discussion on that.
I agree with Ken, with your decision. I'm sure we need to take a vote, but I would agree with that penalty and the 5 and planting the trees. Based on the reasons that you described regarding knowledge, regarding the permitting process.
Value of the trees that went down.
And this would mean that we also got evidence that there was a second tree that was diseased.
Correct.
So if you could submit your pictures for the second tree.
Well, I got 3 of them that show the centers are going rotten. 3 pictures of that.
Okay,
3 separate trees.
submit that to
them
Sharon.
is
Would it
kinda
go to
small.
you? If you can send them to Sharon at the town hall, Sharon Hum. And then we will put in our recommendation to
I
the
wish-
town.
Mr. Barry would have been here because I know he took 100 pictures
Yeah.
and it just seems that he only developed the ones he wanted you to see, I guess.
Well, he would certainly be able to confirm that it
Yeah.
was 2 trees or 3
My
trees.
understanding is the trees are still on your property.
They're all cut up.
They're cut up, but we can still see the stumps. Can we see the stumps
No,
still?
they're gone. Stumps are gone.
Oh, so there's no current walk out to your property and see that. We're just relying on your trees.
This is the only one that we've got,
Yeah.
fortunately.
Send.
The other images
That
show
was-
trees that are.
It was
Yeah.
2 trees, the 2 trees on the same stump on that one.
Mhm.
So there's no way you can take the one out without taking the other one out.
Yeah. I'm going to recommend that you send those pictures to Sharon.
Appreciate it.
Sharon, she can probably, after we're finished, she can give you her email. And we will circle around on that and then,
Madam Chair.
yes.
I just want to say in Mr. Barry's report, he says, I arrived on site and witnessed that 5 trees were cut down with no permit. All trees were tulip poplar. One tree was visibly hollow and had a hole in the stump.
Mhm.
He only mentions that. He doesn't, and then he goes on to talk about, I've highlighted the trees that were removed, but he only notes, and he was on site, that one tree in his report was visibly
The one that
hollow.
had the hollow, or not the hollow, but
Right,
the
what I'm saying is,
it's a different one than the one you picture you just.
I understand that, but he was on site, and from his report, he only noted the one. So I would imagine if there were other trees that were also hollow, he would have made a note in that.
If he's taken all the pictures that Alan suggests he did, presumably Jay would be able to confirm.
Jay wrote his report, so if
I
it was,
understand, but if he somehow erred in his original, photography and only saw one, we can confirm that or deny it with Jay.
And
And
I
Jay
would
hasn't
say-
moved out of country.
I would say that in recommending a $3,000, we're already considering 2 of the trees out. So we're kind of balancing what we have evidence of, physical evidence of versus what you're telling us is true. So we're kind of balancing it there.
Giving the benefit of the doubt.
Benefit of the doubt. Thank you. That's the term I was looking for. All right. A vote on recommending, and I'll write this up formally, Sharon, for you, depending on how this vote falls out, recommending a $3,000 fine for trees taken down, 3 trees taken down without permits. And a requirement that 5 trees replace the trees removed at a location better suited on his property. I will put in the rationale behind that for my, when I send you the formal decision, the 8 things that we've discussed tonight. Can I have a vote on accepting that resolution, recommendation?
Quick question.
Yes.
Can I get any kind of credit for trees I've already planted in the last couple of years?
I don't think that's
No.
relevant.
I don't- yeah.
You also cut other trees, is that correct? So I'm not sure that's relevant.
Well, I
Nor is
already
it-
added, I'm just asking, I already added some trees and
That's great.
okay.
Yeah, I don't see how it's relevant in this case.
Okay.
It's a good policy,
It's
but
good.
it's not.
Yeah. All right, a vote in favor of that recommendation. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Nay? That will be the recommendation we send to the town. At this point, I write up what we've discussed, our rationale for coming up with our reasoning. We send it to the town administrator. She, and I believe the planning and zoning administrator, finalize it. And if they have any further questions, they may or may not come back to us to ask,
Okay.
clarify what we discussed, why we came up with the rationale we came
What
up.
would the appeal process be?
I would assume you would contact the town administrator. She's the one who officially issues the notice. Okay,
I'll contact her,
all right.
contact you.
Then the
Okay,
additional
bring it.
pictures, we'll get back with Jay Barry.
It's easier.
Yeah, we'll contact Jay Barry and ask him more questions about what he saw when he was out there.
All right,
And I honestly can't tell you how long it takes them to issue the letter. I don't know. Is that a week, 2 weeks? The official notification? Yeah, okay. All right, any other, that's the discussion on that. Thank you for coming in. All right. No other public comment? Our next meeting is Tuesday, April 1st. Fool's Day. And with that, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor of adjourning?
I.
Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.